Mr. Speaker.
Right Honourable Winston Peters.
On this day in 628 BC, a coup deposed the Persian Shah, who was shortly murdered, and his son was installed, who died weeks later. On this day in 991, there was the attack to defend Kuwait and rid that country of the Iraqi occupation. It seems that some people have a very poor grasp of history. It's an affront to our democracy that the Prime Minister long ago has done a deal over deploying troops to Iraq, then obtained the Cabinet's rubber stamp, then bypasses Parliament, parliamentary sanction and a vote. If they are so right, as Mr. Key concluded, that it is the right decision, then why not trust the people's institution called Parliament? Yeah. Canada did. Other countries in the 60 have. Why not you? Or is he special when it comes to these decisions where we go to war not as a people or a country, but as a government? Because this is a minority decision. It is not going to get parliamentary sanction, and they never contemplated it. Why are we heading into a conflict that is so predictable not to end? And 25 centuries ago, a wise military commander said, "There is no instance of a nation benefiting from prolonged warfare," and that's what we face in the Middle East. Parliament should have been given today not the jingoistic talk, belated patriotism, the attempt to defend liberty and freedom all around the world. No, just in that part of the world. And all the rest does not matter, whether it's in Indonesia or in Africa. But all of a sudden, we have called ourselves into a debate to go to a war, and a debate usually ends in this Parliament by a vote. So why not the ACT member having a vote like the rest of us? Why not the National Party backbench getting a say? Or are they just cannon fodder for an executive that is so arrogant now, after 7 years, it thinks it can get away with going to an election campaign and saying in June, as they did, that they weren't going to go to war? No, we won't be engaged at all. I can't foresee this, he said. He gave every assurance all the way to election day, and then hardly was election over, and all of a sudden he was deeply upset by people being the subject of atrocities. So what was new back in June that we didn't know about now, or vice versa? There are no new factors. And the Prime Minister's excuse today, in one of the worst speeches I've ever heard on such a serious matter, is of grave concern, because of this we can be certain. We face military tragedy, and we will soon face civilian tragedy, and I want to look into the faces of those people who thought that this was a fair prospect to take this front into. We're a special country, one of only great 9 democracies these last 157 years. That's why they want us, because we've got a record for being fair and for standing up for principles. And so when the Prime Minister says this is a decision to stand up for its values, our values, what on earth did he mean? Our values begin with being a democracy. Our values begin with Parliament deciding whether our people should go to war, not governments going to war against another people. But he can't even understand that most basic of principles, and yet he's the Prime Minister. He knew a long time ago that he was going to join the club. He now of late is saying, oh, it's the club of 60. Well, as John Armstrong and Herald pointed out, oh, so you are joining the club of 60 by going there to join the club, but you weren't a member of the 60 beforehand. It is so incongruous, so illogical, so irrational, but that's the kind of weasel words and, how shall I put it, greasy behaviour that the Prime Minister has evinced for far too long on far too many issues. And if you're a National Party supporter, then you should be seriously worrying about what this means for you, your country, and above all, dare I say it, your political party. Because in the end, you'll wear a minority decision and not be exonerated by the fact that you had this brief debate. This move does not comply with our status on the UN Security Council. This move does not comply with our demand in the past for the UN to give us sanction when we went in 1991 and joined that war. All, of course, about oil and not too much else. We are not working under the legal umbrella of the United Nations, just on a request from one of the Iraqi factions with a grudge against others. The Prime Minister seems ignorant of the geography, the history, the diverse cultures, the tribal affiliations and religions of this area that his club is dragging us into. The club, I might add, that will give a free trade agreement to Morocco, but not us. We'll give one to Chile, but not us. And what are the benefits of being in this club when we have a man travelling around the world in the greatest junket we've ever seen on WTO and other negotiations and not anything to show for it at all? We want to know what comes with membership of this club, because it surely cannot be misery, loss and human suffering. Over there, different groups have a long-standing trend of fighting each other and regularly changing sides. Some of these groups have been fighting for centuries. Our men and women have been thrown into a snake pit where the snakes are biting anything and everything. I know that most of the people in the Middle East want to enter the war. They say they're sick of the war, but sooner or later, the Middle East has got to own up to its own problem and start fixing up its own neighbourhood. We've been to countless wars. We were there against the United States twice, 2 years before they ever came along in the First and Second World War. So what is the price of belonging to the club that we should pay? If anything, we are the prefects in that club, given our record of international responsibility. But you've got to stand up for your country. This business of nod, nod, wink, wink, or as I saw with some of the old countries where they got the view, well, don't worry about New Zealand, we'll talk to them. And then you get an office for a Prime Minister whose training is at Merrill Lynch and he thinks that's the way you do international relations. Well, there's always a day of reckoning for that sort of behaviour, and it's coming soon. And I hope, Prime Minister, that he and his colleagues will have the decency to own up to the fact that they will have made a massive blunder here again. Now, rumour and speculation and twisted facts are being used by all sorts of people, and you would have heard from the Prime Minister's speech and his face switch after the election that all of a sudden he was horrified by all the atrocities. Oh, really? Well, what about Boko Haram? Not a murmur, not a mutter, not a syllable, not a sound of concern at all. No, not a peep, nothing at all. In fact, some of them just flashing through their phones, reading the latest news on stuff. Look at the latest polls to see how it might affect them. Stephen Joyce being the principal one here. He's so concerned about this country going to war that he can't even be bothered engaged in a debate. Now, this is a tragedy, and it should stop. And we want to say to the Prime Minister, the last time the National Party took that view, that is, they would make the decision by lunchtime, namely led by then Don Brash. Guess what happened? We were being sucked into a war to end and find the weapons of mass destruction, only to find out that the pretext was totally dishonest and they were not there. Illegal. And all of a sudden, the mess and maelstrom generating from those events, we 12 years on, no, not 12 years on, just very recently on from that event, are going back again. Prime Minister, there's no containment when it comes to war. There's no behind the fence when it comes to war. If, for example, and he gives the assurance, oh, well, if the Iraqis are 500 yards down the street and fighting, we won't be engaged. What if they're in the same room? Is it the intent of our military to hold a flag up saying, don't shoot us, we're here on a peaceful purpose? It's ridiculous in the extreme. And no one believes that. The Canadians in on a similar engagement are saying and proving to us right now, if it comes and push comes to shove, we'll be fighting all right and fighting for our lives. And what sort of respect will our soldiers have if that's the attitude that they take in the field? Now, thank God the soldiers of our country aren't so gutless and courageous or lacking in fortitude, are not so gutless or lacking in fortitude to make that statement. I know that when push comes to shove, they'll put their life on the line. But I would have preferred, and my party would have preferred from New Zealand First, that Parliament gave them a mandate. So putting their lives at risk for our country and for the sake of peace came with the support of all the New Zealand people, not just an arrogant government making a minority decision.
Speaker.